Locked out of peace talks in Geneva, Syria's Kurds look to consolidate their control over the north of the country with a plan for a federal system in Syria. Could it work? And how will Kurdish demands affect negotiations aimed at ending 5 years of war? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. Syria has been at war now for 5 years, and in that time the Kurdish Democratic Union Party, or PYD, and its armed wing, the YPG, have skillfully gained control of almost the entire northern stretch of the country, an area the Kurds call Rojava. Aided by US material support and airstrikes, they're seen as a key ally in the fight against ISIL. But the Kurds of Syria have been frustrated as their victories on the battlefield have not been translated into political gains. Shut out of UN-brokered peace talks in Geneva, they've now chosen to go it alone, declaring their intention to establish a federal Kurdish region in northern Syria. The Kurds say they're not pushing for independence, rather for a decentralised federal model to be applied throughout Syria. But their plan is running into major resistance, not just from Turkey, which has threatened to go to war, if necessary, to block the creation of any autonomous Kurdish region in Syria, but also from the bulk of the Syrian opposition and the government in Damascus. This is, of course, a rare occasion when the opposition and the government agree on something. Syria's foreign ministry was quick to react, warning anyone who dares to undermine the unity of the land and the people of Syria, including those who are now meeting in the city of Ramillion. It said a federal system would constitute a violation of the Syrian constitution and international resolutions. Well, historically, the Syrian Kurds have laid claim to these three areas, Jazeera, Kobani and Afrin, and they're part of the region that the Kurds already have control over in practice. The proposed federation has parallels with Iraq's Kurdish region, where more than 8 million Kurds have been governing themselves for 2 decades. But the Iraqi Kurds have a good relationship with Turkey, who vehemently oppose the proposed Syrian federation. That's because of the YPG's alleged ties to the PKK, an outlawed group that has been fighting the Turkish government in this region for years. All right, so that's the story. Let's bring in our guests now for the discussion. Joining us from Erbil is Peter Galbraith, a former US diplomat and advisor to Syria's Kurds. In Ankara in Turkey, Muhattin Ataman, a deputy general coordinator of the Turkey-based think tank SETA. And in Cambridge, I'm pleased to say, we're joined by Lydia Wilson, who's research fellow at the Centre for the Resolution of Intractable Conflict, which is based at Oxford University. Welcome to you all. Peter Galbraith in Erbil, I'd like to start with you, if I may, first of all. You know northern Syria very well. You've advised the Kurds. Tell us a little more about what the Kurds want here.
Well, the first point is that they're creating a federal region, but it's not just a Kurdish region. It includes Arabs and Christians. And in fact, in their cantons, they have been very careful not to say that these are Kurdish cantons. They have Arabs and Christians as co-prime ministers of their governing units. But they are looking for a decentralized, or now they say federal Syria, in which they would have a very significant self-government. Although the reaction from the Syrian government and from the opposition, neither of which are really very democratic, is to oppose federalism on the grounds that it would be divisive of Syria. In fact, federalism can be a way to hold together divided countries. That's true in many cases. Canada is a case in point. Actually, Iraq is a case in point. So I think it's wrong to think that they are looking for separation. They certainly want to run their own affairs. After all, this is an area that is geographically removed from Damascus. It's an area that has historically been discriminated against. The Kurds are the largest group there. Their national and even linguistic rights have been denied. And so they see the self-government, which comes in a federal system, as a way to accommodate it. I think they also think that federalism is going to be a solution for other minorities in Syria, particularly the Alawites who are along the coast. This is the group of President Assad. And assuming that at some point he's going to leave power, the Alawites too will feel very threatened by a Sunni majority that many of whom view the Alawites as heretics, as apostates, and blame them for the Assad regime. So they too might find this a federal system an attractive form of self-protection.
And as far as northern Syria is concerned, I'm right in saying, aren't I, that the Kurds are pretty much in de facto control of these areas anyway?
Well, that's right. There is no Syrian government presence. The so-called Riyadh group, the recognized rebel groups that are at the peace talks, they don't have a presence there. Most of the main area that stretches from Qamishli to Kobani is completely surrounded by the Islamic State. The Syrian Kurds and their Arab allies have been not the most effective, but they've been the only effective fighters against the Islamic State. They've rolled back the Islamic State from a significant amount of territory. They're the America's and the West's principal ally. So far, it's been a tactical partnership. But obviously, they are now looking to convert that into making political gains, which is, I think, understandable.
All right, well, let's get the view from Ankara now, Muhittin Ataman. It all seems to make sense, doesn't it? Why is Turkey so against this?
First of all, I think I have to make two corrections. The first one is the PYD's relationship with PKK is not an allegation. It's only a part of an umbrella organization which is known as KCK, which is the Union of Communities in Kurdistan, an umbrella organization which was established by PKK several years ago, about a decade ago, and PYD is only a part of it. So PYD and PKK are two different organizations of a coalition under an umbrella. The second thing is, unfortunately, claiming PYD's declaration of this federation, not only in the name of the Kurds, but also representing, including some Arabs and Christians, this idea is also a misleading one, since we all know that PYD does not even represent the whole Kurds living in northern Syria. We know that there is a large group of Kurds, unfortunately, who escaped from PYD, and nowadays they live under the control of Barzani government in northern Iraq.
All right, but as Peter was just saying, the Kurds are already in de facto control of this region. So what? Just put it simply, what is Turkey's problem with this idea?
If they, based on this declaration, they even include the region between Azaz and Cerablos, that is, the whole Turkish-Syrian border is claimed by PKK. We know that there is a great change of demographic change there. Turkey considers this declaration, the declaration of any political entity by PYD as a direct threat to its national security, because of this close communication and having the same roots with PKK. So this federation is considered from the Turkish side as a federation established by PKK, not only by the Syrian Kurds. This is for one thing. And unfortunately, the Kurdish struggle inspired by Rojava region in Syria, there is unfortunately an intensive struggle going on between PKK and Turkey inside of Turkey. And just last week, this struggle was extended to the city of Nusaybin, a city just next to Qamishli, and there are many tunnels. We know that there is a huge interaction of military men, militant, financial and economic interactions, assistance from the northern side to the south. And to me, the declaration of such a federation for now is a result of the Turkish intensified struggle with PKK.
Okay,
so
let me take that point. Let me take that point.
Between
I need to move this on. Let's go to Cambridge now and speak to Lydia. What do you say about that? The PKK, the Syrian Kurds have the same roots as the PKK, and this is an insurmountable problem for Turkey.
Well, I wouldn't deny that they are part of the same umbrella organisation, as you pointed out, but they are also very much concerned with establishing a Syrian area, a Syrian federal area, which does have territorial integrity that Turkey doesn't really have any rights over. And I would hope that there would have to be proof of the PYD exporting terrorist acts to Turkish soil before there was any action against them. Because right now, I don't see that link very clearly. I don't think it has been proved.
Muhittin, what do you say to that?
To me, this is hilarious to claim that there is the two organizations have different perspectives and use different instruments. We know that, almost half of the militants fighting on the side of the PKK are educated, are trained on the Syrian side of the border. We know that, especially the transferring the struggle, I'm talking about the PKK's struggle in the cities. PKK until very recently, it was fighting against the Turkish security forces in the countryside. But the know-how that they got from the PYD and from the Kurdish side, they last year initiated this in-city fighting with the Turkish armed forces. We know that there are many exchanges between the two sides. I mean, even an ordinary citizen in Turkey, all of 78 million of Turkish citizens, all of them, from the Turkish side and from the Kurdish side, they are aware that they are a part of the same organization and they have the same perspective, and that's why the Turkish state considers any declaration in the Syrian side as a direct internal problem directed against its territorial integrity.
Okay, Lydia,
and
I can see you're desperate to come in. So
why
Lydia, just come in very briefly because I want to get back to Peter.
Well, I would say that they do have certain different ambitions and techniques. And right now, the Syrian Kurds, the armed wing, have huge obstacles to overcome. They are fighting right now within their territory. Their arms are not being directed at Turkey in a very real sense. They're engaging with ISIS. And so the PKK and the YPG are acting in different places. They might share ideology. I definitely don't deny that. They both follow Öcalan. I don't deny that. But to say that they're both focused on the same thing right now with the same techniques doesn't seem to me to have been proved. But I'd like to hear Peter's response to that too.
All right, Peter, briefly on that.
There are no doubt that there are contacts, that they're kindred organizations, but they are distinct. And immediately after this latest attack in Ankara, the authorities in Rojava in Syrian Kurdistan came out and condemned the attack in Ankara, called it an act of terrorism. I think the Syrian Kurds, the PYD and the other parties that are their allies, are very mindful that they now have the military support of the United States. It's vital for their military actions, and so they are not going to go out and try to launch operations in Turkey. They in fact are very clear that they would like better relations with Turkey. They would like in many ways to go down the same path as the Iraqi Kurds, which in the 1990s. Turkey saw the Kurdistan region in Iraq as an existential threat.
Okay,
now
it is just come back to that point about the United States.
Of all of Turkey's neighbors.
Sorry, Peter, I just need to move this on. We're talking about the United States supporting the Kurds, the military support that they offer, but they're not wholly supportive of this particular plan, are they? I mean, nor is Damascus, nor is the opposition. There's a whole raft of people who don't support it. Even the Iraqi Kurds aren't in support of the concept.
First, the Iraqi Kurds do support federalism in Syria, as do the Syrian Kurds, who are opposed to the PYD, but they too have come out in favor of federalism. The United States has taken an official stance of saying that this isn't helpful, But in reality, the United States is going to engage politically with the Syrian Kurds. I think the United States recognizes that inevitably in a diverse country like Syria, a federal solution is probably going to be part of the peace process. They aren't going to come out and say it right now, but they're a pretty shrewd group of diplomats, and they understand that you are not going to achieve a peace agreement between the Syrian government and the official opposition when, in fact, the Syrian Kurds, who are, again, America's military ally, control more territory than either the government or the Riyadh opposition. And the other point to keep in mind is that the Russians have endorsed federalism, and they're very important players. In fact, I would argue that one reason for the Russian withdrawal is that it is intended to pressure the Assad government into making more concessions to these other groups, and including the Syrian Kurds on the question of federalism.
And Lydia, on the question of the peace process, what about the timing of this coming as it does during ongoing talks from which the Kurds are excluded?
Right. Well, I would say that there is nothing inevitable about anything to do with the peace process, as we've seen disastrously and heartbreakingly over the last 5 years, that people have been pushing their own agendas far above any sort of shrewdness that Peter might value in the diplomats. Yeah, I mean, they have been excluded, and that probably does leave them feeling as though they shouldn't be. They are a very strong force. They are an ally. I think, though, probably what has more to do with this is the Russian withdrawal, rather than the aim of being included in any peace process, because I think they probably realise that that's not going to happen quickly, not in time for the next round of negotiations.
And Muhsin, it should certainly come as no surprise that whatever the reason, that the Kurds should state a claim, given the fact that these talks are going on at the moment. This is, the timing is pretty blatant, isn't it?
The Kurds were not invited to the negotiation table because of the opposition of both the Assad regime and the opposition, the Syrian opposition, and on the other side of the Turkish opposition. It was a red line for Turkey to invite the Kurds to the negotiation table. With the withdrawal of the Russian Federation, the Russian forces from the Syrian territory, accelerated this situation. I mean, accelerated declaration of the Kurds. So this declaration is a kind of an indication demonstrating the increasing divergence between Iran and the Assad regime on the one side and the Russian Federation on the other. This divergence will lead the unsustainability of this declared Kurdish political entity. It's not a regional project. To me, it seems it's a global project initiated probably and agreed by both the United States and the Russian Federation. And unlike any other example, when you compare the Syrian side, the Syrian Kurds with the Iraqi one, we know that both regional and global powers, they supported the creation of a federal Iraqi state. But this is not the case for the Syrian one. Not Iran, not Turkey, not the Syrian opposition, or any other Syrian factions, they support an independent or semi-independent political Kurdish entity in northern Syria.
Okay, Lydia, you come back to that, and then I'm just going to move across to Peter to talk about what implications this will have on the talks.
For a start, I don't think a round of peace talks can possibly depend on what all sides want to begin with. There shouldn't be places at the negotiating table depending on whether certain countries are okay with that or not okay with that, or the opposition or the regime wants certain things. That's not the idea of peace talks. Peace talks is to bring together players that do not agree around a table. There wouldn't be conflict if people already agreed. So I think you've misread what peace talks should and can achieve. If you start excluding people because you don't like their political stance and you don't want them to have power, then the peace talks are probably doomed in the long term. Second, I know that Russia haven't supported an independent Kurdish state, of course, but they have floated the idea, as have the United States, that a federal system might be a way of achieving some sort of stability and indeed unity, though that might seem paradoxical. But that's coming back to a point Peter made, that federation can work, and there's no reason to assume it won't work. And indeed, Russia and America have both accepted that that might be the way forward. Of course, they haven't come forward to support this move by the Kurds, because probably the timing is considered pretty bad, because America has said this depends on the Syrian people. People shouldn't be acting unilaterally like this. If federation is agreed by everyone, then fine. But right now, this unilateral move isn't democratic, and it isn't right.
Okay, so Peter, as far as the ongoing talks are concerned, what implications, what impact do you think this declaration will have on how they may pan out, if any?
Well, first, the declaration moving to federalism was something that had been underway for some time, so it's not specifically linked to the peace process. But I think the timing of the announcement is linked to the peace process, and it is a consequence of excluding the Syrian Kurds. And they're doing what any sensible party would do in a negotiation, which is to strengthen its hand by creating facts on the ground. So that I think is what they've done. I mean, it is a unilateral act, but nonetheless, in order to come to an agreement on a new constitution of Syria, it is going to have to take into account these facts on the ground, including the declaration of a federal region. I think it's also worthwhile taking a look at Turkey's position, because Turkey has been very hostile to the Syrian Kurds, but in fact it doesn't have very many tools to accomplish its objectives, so it can't really intervene militarily. It can't use its air force. There's no doubt that the Russians, for example, would be spoiling for an opportunity to settle scores with Turkey for the shoot down of the Russian plane. But by isolating the Syrian Kurds, they are in effect driving them into the hands of the Russians, and possibly to make a separate deal with the regime, which would then exclude the very opposition groups that Turkey has supported.
Okay, Peter, I'm going to jump in there because we're right at the end of the program. I'm sorry to jump in, but we've got to throw to Ankara just for the last question to give a response to that. Muhittin, the Syrian government say they want to preserve the nation. This declaration could be the way to do it.
I don't agree with this hostility towards the Syrian Kurds. For the first years of the crisis, the Turkish government and Mr. Davutoğlu declared that any gains by the Syrian Kurds will be considered as gains for the Turkish state as well. But Turkey asked two things. One, cutting the relationship with the PKK, and on the other hand, with the Assad regime. But until the last point, PYD continued to cooperate with the Assad regime and with the Russian Federation. This is not a novelty. This is a new thing on the ground. And the Turkish state asked PYD not to change the demography and not to claim for the territories traditionally inhabited by a multi-ethnic and multicultural social structure. So in one sense, Turkey opposed the monopolization of the politics and the territory, the geography of northern Syria. And unfortunately, we now at a point that I'm sure the future of Syria.
We're going to have to cut you off there. We're right at the end of the program. Do appreciate all your perspectives. Thank you very much indeed to all our guests, Peter Galbraith, Muhittin Ataman and Lydia Wilson. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for watching. You can see the program again at any time by visiting our website, which is at aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, just go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Nick Clark, and the whole team here, it's goodbye for now.